Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex. And today I wanted to do a follow-up to yesterday's Shadowland video. Shadowland has now restarted, and you may be using some of the tips and some of the guidance that I mentioned in yesterday's video to choosing the best or the easiest Shadowland stages for you to get the furthest that you can. But a lot of you guys asked for a follow-up video. You hit me up in the comments, as I commonly say, and you were like, hey, can you guys, or can you tell us about all the characters that you're using for specific stages and how you've chosen characters at, the beginning of Shadowlands versus in the middle versus in the end. So I wanted to give you guys that, and I wanted to talk about the second sheet of that Excel document. So if you don't know what I'm talking about today just yet, you missed yesterday's video, go check out yesterday's video. It's easiest Shadowland stages. We will wait here for you, and then when you return, we will talk about the characters that you will use on those easiest stages. But we're not actually going to wait for anybody. Don't worry, we're going to continue. So on that same Excel spreadsheet that I mentioned in the first video, on the bottom, at the very bottom, you can find a second sheet called Blad 14. I don't know why it's called Blad 14, but Blad, because you're going to see this when you open it up. You're going to see something that's very, very similar to this. And I know that this seems like a lot. We've gone full Excel spreadsheet. This is now basically just a high school class, except not really. Except that would be cool to major in video games or Marvel Future Fight. Anyways, what this is a breakdown from my perspective, in my opinion, of character stages for Shadowland. So on the far left hand of each of the columns, you will see a color. The color is just coordinated to the type. Very straightforward. Blast types go first, then combat, then speed. And then at the bottom, you will find the purple boys and girls, who are the universal types. Then I've further broken them down by team. So team 1 are the strongest characters in the game. These are the characters, usually native tier 2 characters, who are going to do the heavy lifting for me at the very end of Shadowland. And this is designed for me to get to stage 30 as fast as possible. So I don't want to use Doctor Strange on stage 5 because that would be very inefficient. The second team, likewise, is for the kind of mid stages, anywhere from 10 to 20 roughly. And then the third team is for the beginning stages, those first 1 to 10 stages. So if you're just starting out for Shadowland, you're probably not going to have most of the characters of the game. So it's okay if you're using Sharon Rogers, even though she's listed over here for me. If you only have her and you only have 5 characters, you're going to have to use Sharon Rogers at the beginning. That's okay. You don't have to follow, or you don't need to pay attention too much to the ranking that I've given characters in terms of which stage they can cover, whether it's 10 to 15 for my Ironheart or a different number for your Ironheart. This is just a general guideline. I think there's a lot more merit to my guidelines at the very end, because it doesn't really make sense to waste high-level characters at the beginning of Shadowland unless those are your only characters. And I think that the middle stage is also a pretty fair representation of the character's overall strength, because you don't want to make something too hard on yourself. I think possibly Tier 2 Storm can clear stage 25, for example, but it will take multiple attempts, and if you don't have a lot of time to clear, or you don't have the patience to clear it, or try over and over again, you may find yourself frustrated and you may end up quitting Shadowland for the week. So I think it's a more reasonable representation. I think where we will find the most disagreement, or where you may find the most confusion, is in my very bottom tier list. And this is the tier for characters who I find are best suited to clearing the first 10 stages of Shadowland. Now, don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm not saying that Baron Mordo can't clear stages above 7. I'm also not saying that Shang-Chi or Moon Knight can't clear stages above 7, or Hulk above 5. This is a list before the Ragnarok update, so I have some changes to make on the fly with you guys. But this is a representation of where the character can perform reasonably well without many, if any, mistakes. So yes, you can absolutely clear a stage 20 Rumble with Lincoln. Are you going to have to try it more than once? Yes. Are you going to probably have to try it more than 10 times? Maybe. But I can try, and in one shot, in one attempt, I can clear anything from 1 to 7 using Lincoln as my primary damage. This is not meant to be necessarily a solo list, but it is very close to a solo list. I think it's reasonable to expect a tier 1 Wiccan to basically solo any Rumble from 1 to 7 if you just throw any other 2 characters with him who are just going to serve as meat bags. Same thing with Star-Lord. I don't think it's unreasonable for a tier 1 Star-Lord for a reasonably well-built account with a high-level alliance with decent cards and skill cooldown and stuff like that to clear, mostly from his own damage, a 1 to 5 rumble. In addition to the stages that I've set as parameters or as guidelines for characters, we also have this 4th stage or this 4th list here called Team Turtle. And this Team Turtle is basically characters that I think either cannot solo by themselves, like Phil Coulson, like not Maximus, but Rocket Raccoon, for example, or characters that I feel are just much too slow to clear stages. So yes, Mysterio can solo a rumble at low levels, but it's going to take you more than a minute. It's going to take you more than 2 minutes, especially at tier 1. Same thing with MODOK, same things with Drax, and so on. The list goes on and on and on. So those are the reasons why certain characters are finding themselves in this Team Turtle. You may disagree with me. You may be able to clear high-level stages with these characters, but I know that it won't be done quickly and it won't be done efficiently. It will take multiple attempts. For example, another one, I used to clear the Ant-Man. I used to use Ant-Man to clear a blast relay with Wiccan, Lash, and Sister Grimm. And I used to use him at about stage 15 or stage 20, but it would take me 2 minutes, and I would have to use War Machine's leadership, and it would take me multiple attempts because sometimes I would die before my tier 2 passive refreshed. And so that's the kind of thing that I'm trying to avoid with this list. This list is more geared towards something akin to a speed run or kind of a flawless run. You can also use this to guide you for a solo run as well. I would not necessarily use this list to build characters if you're just starting out in the game. This is more for intermediate players who are trying to have a more in-depth understanding of their roster. You know, I have 30 characters now. I have 40 6-star characters, and I need to kind of mentally figure out and plan which ones I'm going to use in which spots for Shadowland. In addition to the information that I've already listed, I color-coded characters who have a damage leadership in yellow. So you can see that every character that's going to be able to boost their own damage or their friends' damage, their teammates, will be color-coded in yellow. There's a couple of ones that I missed, like Doctor Strange and Magneto, but that is because it's a very niche leadership or because it's not the primary use for the character. Agent Venom notwithstanding, and I guess Thanos as well. In addition, I also color-coded characters in purple on the actual character icon, or more like pink, hot pink, who have a buff effect. So Wasp has a debuff effect, but then Phil Coulson, Daisy Johnson, and Warwolf have a buff effect. So if I need to bump up, let's say, Sister Grimm, and I want to use her on a stage 10 rumble, but I'm having trouble, I can pull one of the purple characters from Team Turtle, and I can use them. And essentially how you would actively use this list once you're trying to complete Shadowland, you can open this up side by side on your computer or on your phone, and then as you use characters, you can just strike out or strike through with the text function to show that the character is no longer usable. So if I were to do that here, I would go to format and strike through. It takes a while on a PC, but it looks something like that. And now I know mentally that Sister Grimm is no longer usable because I used her on some rumble. And you can go even further than that by listing where you used her, but that is up to you and not something that I'm doing here now. Another thing I want to do with you guys is just give you an example of adding 2 characters, because we're missing from this list Valkyrie and we are missing Scourge. So Scourge. So for example, I have listed here only for Team 3, we have different modes here. And this is my kind of rough draft attempt, first attempt at guessing or predicting which type of mode they are best suited to. So for example, I chose Titania for a wave mode because she can sustain her DPS for a long time, and she has great single target damage, and she has great AoE damage, and she can survive for a long time in the waves against both a single target boss who has a large HP pool and smaller minions attacking who have a smaller HP pool. By comparison, Punisher would be very bad for a wave mode because he cannot deal with that. But Punisher is good for a rumble because he can move back out of damage, out of range, and he can pick you off from long range and use his abilities and skills without taking as much damage. So he's still usable, just in a different type of game mode. Another example, Dr. Octopus. He's very good in a 2-on-1 or a 1-on-1 situation because of his crowd control and because so many of his skills have a push effect. This is without the uniform. With the uniform, he's still good in 1-on-1 and 2-on-1 situations, because of the webbing. However, Dr. Octopus loses a lot of that value in rumbles, where he can't target characters as easily and there's too much chaos going on. And he's also not as good, much worse actually, in a wave mode, because even though you're crowd controlling a couple of the mobs or the boss, you still have all of the other enemies hitting you and dealing damage to you, and you're probably going to die very quickly. So with that being said, I think that Scourge is probably best saved for a relay, because most of his skills from my testing deal single target damage, or they deal damage in a very small area of effect. He doesn't have a large area of effect for his skills, so he will struggle with rumbles, he will struggle with waves, but he will probably excel in one-on-one or two-on-one situations. And given his damage numbers and given his crowd control and his guard hits, I would probably say he's best suited for something around 1 to 7. And if I don't copy and paste this, it's going to change it to a date of the month of the year, which I don't want. Again, your Scourge, if he's tier 2 especially, will probably be able to do better than 1 to 7, but I think that these numbers here are good indicators for the average account at tier 1. Of course, if they're tier 2, and I am assuming that most characters in your team 1 and team 2 are going to be tier 2, but if they're not, you may have to bump these numbers down a little bit, but if they are, you can even bump the numbers up a little bit. I think there's a range of about +5 to +10 for the characters in Team 3, depending on how much effort and investment you've put into those characters. But again, this is a general consensus guide for your average player, and it's something that I was using myself for a speed run analysis, not for just a regular clear. If you have 2 or 3 hours or days even to clear Shadowland, by all means make more out of your roster, make more use out of them, and use Luke Cage on a stage 20. Use Miles Morales on a stage 25. That's fine by me. Finally, let's check out Valkyrie. I think that she would probably be best on a wave mode, which are a bit tougher, but it does suit her playstyle because she has abilities that will provide her with survivability, guards, or invincibility and iframes, but then she has lots of AoE, and she has summons who can kind of help her crowd control and help herd all the enemies into one spot. And I think Valkyrie's a little bit stronger than Scourge. I'm going to guess 1 to 10, but again, I gotta copy and paste this so that it doesn't change it to a date. So this is my sheet, and this is my data that I've been collecting and going over and updating for a Shadowland speedrun, but you can by all means use this for yourself to plan out which characters can go in which places. I find that this style of data kind of design or setup works best because by giving yourself a range, you're giving a better idea of where a character can fit, and while you may not fit all of your characters into each Shadowland run, you won't by accident use up too many characters that you need later on at the beginning if you follow this. If I were to improve this, and I definitely can improve on this model, I would probably take some time, or I would reconsider how I've designed this to also indicate whether a character is a villain or a superhero. And I think that part is probably very important for a lot of you guys because you don't have a lot of villains, and we know that the new Shadowlands format requires a lot of villains, especially in the early goings. Stage 4, there's an automatic villain stage and stuff like that. So I think if you tweaked this a little bit further on your own and you listed out the villains, it would help you really see as you're going through Shadowland, hey, I'm 10 stages in and I've already used up 5 villains. I should probably slow down and choose some of the hero stages if I want to make it to 20 this time instead of getting stuck at 16 and not getting that extra card from the legendary card from that stage 20 clear or something like that. So it's those kinds of ideas and it's those kinds of planning ahead staging that you can do that will hopefully help you get further in Shadowland and do so with less headache and with more ease and a little bit of fun kind of Excel color coding along the way. So let me know what you guys think of this part 2 Shadowland kind of character solo kind of guide to which characters go on which floors as much as you can for Shadowland. Subscribe if you're having a good time, and of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.